Good morning, everyone. We have very nice and intimate crowd. So I would like to introduce our panelists for the day. I would like to welcome Stephen. Stephen Lorimer, Smart London Strategy Officer from Great London Authority. I would like to invite Laura Peacock, Innovation and Research Manager from Oxfordshire County Council. And last but not least, Gustav Landahl, Head of Department from City of Stockholm.
Way away.
Good morning, everyone. So my name is Zaina Nazer. I'll be moderating this session. We have a very interesting and hot topic here, and I will not talk much because we have very interesting speakers. They have a lot of experience and they're really excited to share what they have. So I would like to start with Stephen. Maybe if you don't mind first introducing yourself for 1 minute. Probably it would help if I introduce myself. So I am the Cities Forum co-founder, and I'm a doctoral researcher at University of Southampton, working on autonomous vehicles, LiDAR application autonomous vehicle, focusing on road safety. So yeah, that's all about me. So okay, so if Stephen, you would like to introduce yourself, please, and then Laura, and then Gustav.
Thank you very much. So my name is Stephen Lorimer, and I'm the Smart London Strategy and Delivery Officer at the Greater London Authority. And how did I get to this point today, and how did I arrive in this room? I actually started out as an urban designer working in master plans across the UK, Ireland, and other places around. And some of that, of course, did involve redesigning streets and spaces, starting to get into things like agent-based modeling and master planning. But really it was the moment when civil engineers, transport engineers came and said, we have data that says that your design will kill people, so put up some really ugly guardrailing. And we had quantity surveyors that came around saying, we had some data saying your return on investment doesn't work, so please change your design so it's less hospitable to the people that you're designing for in projects from the Aylesbury estate in Southwark all the way through to the Docklands in Dublin that I worked on. And so I decided that we couldn't beat them with qualitative projections of good design. And I went and did a PhD over at UCL to join in with the data scientists and learn how to do that myself. And since then I've been doing some work, for instance, with the UCL Transport Institute with Peter Jones, who's the head of the Roads Task Force in TfL, on the impact of the Olympics on the transport system, and lately I've come into City Hall after some work at Imperial College Business School on how we develop business models for sustainable technologies. And there's a session later today that we're going to talk on the sustainability front.
Okay, thank you, Laura.
Hi, my name's Laura Peacock, so I'm the manager of the Innovation Hub at Oxfordshire County Council. Now, similar to Stephen, my background is in strategic planning and urban planning, so there's a link there. So I was getting involved in big master planning of sites in Oxfordshire, and also minerals and waste planning. So something about Oxfordshire, it's obviously got the urban core in the city, but it's one of the most rural counties in the southeast. So quite different challenges in terms of mobility, but also healthcare, education. So the Innovation Hub is a service that is across the whole of the County Council. There's 23 staff. We started 4 years ago with just 2 staff, so from quite humble beginnings. What's really important there is 80% of us are externally funded, so that gives us a real sort of sustainable business case for the County Council, so we're not a large drain on the resources. The main aim of our service and of the team is around developing and deploying innovative solutions in Oxfordshire and beyond. So that's the urban and the rural setting. And challenging those traditional models that local authorities follow. So this could be in delivering healthcare, it could be transport modelling, how new technologies interact with traffic management control, with traffic lights. So it's also about continually saying, what if, have you thought of this? True to all of this is collaboration. We truly could not have done this without the partnership working, without the relationships with the academia and with the local businesses around the room that we've got partnerships and collaborations with. I think local authorities are truly important because we provide a neutral space and there is that trusted brand, because trust is so important. But also, we have to admit it, we have got a lot of challenges. We're a big problem owner, but we hold a lot of data. We've got access to clients. So we're that brilliant conduit between the solutions and the actual problem owners. So we sit in the middle. We're also, my team are also the lead innovation across the England economic heartland. So that's the Oxford, Milton Keynes, Cambridge Arc. So we've got a bigger playground to offer when we're working with business to say, okay, it's not just Oxfordshire, there's this regional element too. Now, other members of my team will be presenting today. I've got George in the room now, who's our Connected Autonomous Team leader, and everyone's welcome to talk to him. We've also got Llewellyn, who's the Head of Innovation, and we've got Didi, who's the Health and Care Innovation Lead.
Thank you, Laura. Gustav?
My name is Gustav Landahl. I work for the city of Stockholm in Sweden. Similar to you guys, I used to be a city planner responsible for the master planning in the city. At that time, most of my work was to stop the urban sprawling, to start building more in the city, and also to start building more public transport lines within the city and car sharing parking facilities to be able to create a better future for the city. But after 95, I've been heading a department at the Environment and Health Administration. I'm responsible for the climate work in the city, the energy efficiency, most of the environmental control as well of industries, airport, for example, but also environmental issues and land use planning. So that's my background.
That's great. Thank you very much.
And I could say I also coordinate a big European project called Grow Smarter, which is a smart city project.
Thank you, Gustav. So, as you can see, we have a fabulous group of panels, and we will be talking about how to join the smart city with smart mobility by creating cross-sector collaboration for innovative cities of tomorrow. So, I would like to start with Stephen. I have a list of 3 questions, so there's no order. You can start.
Yeah.
It just creates kind of the subject for you. You have 6 minutes. And then you can give your ideas. Maybe then we can have a little discussion between the panelists, and hopefully we will get 10 minutes left for the audience to ask the panelists. So, Stephen, how do we get the smart city to successfully interact with smart mobility? This is question 1. We would like to hear from you about data sharing between public sector and the interaction between walking maps and data, especially for London. This is very interesting.
So the first thing I always open with all the time is that the local government in London is extremely fragmented. We don't have the situation that Gustav has in Stockholm. We have one local authority that sets the strategy and delivers all the services, and we have 33 boroughs that have their own leaders, their own political priorities, and a lot of people know in the room their own transport department to manage streets. We have Transport for London on top of that manage the strategic roads that are only about 50% of the roads, but over 50% of the traffic. And of course, running the transport system and running the regulatory environment for London as well. And I hope in the questions here you aren't asking me specific, really detailed questions about TfL regulation, because I'm just going to have to ask them. But we do try to bring the data that is being produced by the transport system and the utility system together in a way which is usable by everyone. And so a couple of examples of that. One is we've been developing in our infrastructure team what's called the infrastructure mapping application over the last 3 years. And what it is that it gets our privatized utility companies, also very different from other countries that we have. The cities don't control their gas, electricity, water networks, that they're all privatized. And getting them to share their future plans, how certain they are, whether they're going to be changing in the future, getting boroughs and their transport departments to share their streets maintenance and closure schedules, for instance, and reduce the amount of disruption and closures that we have in the future. And also to be able to make sure that when we have developed in London, it has all the utility networks in line to actually deliver the services for them, from telecoms to gas and electricity. You would assume that they would have it on their fingertips, but a lot of Londoners would be disappointed that they haven't in the past, and that actually has slowed things down even more than the planning system, which usually gets the kicking on 80% of the kicking from developers. Another example that we've been working on is on air quality. A lot of Londoners feel uneasy with the fact that we create models of our air quality from 100 high-quality environmental sensors that cost hundreds of thousands of pounds each, which is why we only have 100 of them. They want to feel that something measured on their street at the time that they're commuting is being used to be able to explain their experience, their health disbenefits. And in these days of the first days of the ultra-low emission zone, we're working with Alan Turing Institute right now to determine how can small sensors that you may be carrying around, the London Cycling Campaign have been giving them out for free with their membership, for instance. Others have been producing ones that are maybe not as cheap as those ones. But those are things that have a lot of error to them. But how do we use artificial intelligence to be able to get that, to reduce that error, get it to modulate it, and produce models that can help us change the way that we plan our streets and spaces, make decisions about closing roads in the future that are much more specific, dynamic, that we could use with this evidence. And those are kind of ideas that we have in the future. And a lot of presentations made today have been around, and I think there was in the last one, around these private, in quotation marks, forms of transport that are distributed, such as ride sharing, scooters, or dockless bikes that have happened in the past. Now, we have a healthy streets agenda in London, and healthy streets means better air quality, but also means active travel. And we want to have 63% of Londoners who currently use public transport, use active travel to get around London. We want to get that to 80% by 2041. Now, better technologies and cleaner technologies in vehicles and using connected autonomous vehicles to get people around are very welcome, but doesn't change our target. And we're not planning to lower it in response to those kinds of technologies. There are social and economic reasons to have that target besides ones that are just around environmental reasons and air quality. We are examining the legality of scooters. You have seen electric scooters that have been around. They're not legal right now on streets, but we are testing them in the mayor's own private land because we are legally allowed to do that in the Olympic Park. We're partnering with Bird right now to be able to test those in the Olympic Park. You can try it now. We're trying to look at how those solutions could help Londoners in the future. It's not currently classed as active travel because you are standing and not moving. But we are working a lot on data sharing in the future because Transport for London themselves found out that their own open data store and open and unified API that they put out has an annual benefit of £130 million to London and produces over 500 direct jobs and more than 2,000 indirect jobs as well. And we want to make sure that those lessons learned can improve our nighttime economy, for instance, can improve the financing of air quality sensors, as another example. And we're looking at how we can move from open data to shared data, and the data that cannot be open because it's individual level data, but it has a lot of value. How do we change the way that we do things? And it's a lot more costly and a lot more legal processes to it, but we're partnering with the Open Data Institute to look at, for example, data trust models and other legal frameworks, and we're going to be launching a report on Monday to talk about that more effectively. And last part that you asked about on walking and walking maps, we have been running a civic innovation challenge where we've been challenging startups to look at problems that Londoners face. And one problem that Londoners face is active travel. They don't feel confident with it. They want the information they need to find their way around. And we partnered with a company called Go Jauntily over the last 6 months. And they've been producing what's called the Walking Tube Map to help people feel confident to find their ways to their nearest underground or train station, or even Santander Cycles docking station, and how we can expand that to help people feel confident walking and cycling around the city, which is very important for us.
Thank you, Stephen. We will get back to you when we start benchmarking
Yeah.
with Stockholm
Yeah.
and other cities. Now to you, Laura. I have a few questions. So building trust across partnerships and establishing common ways of working between private and public organizations. I would like you to talk a little bit about this. Also about understanding the bureaucratic differences that can hinder public-private partnership and the key learning from successful collaborations across the globe.
Okay, thank you. So I think one of the most important things about trusted partnerships is embracing the knowledge and the expertise across all the partners. And it's something that the representative from here said is no one can do it alone, and I think we all need to acknowledge that. And I think that's in Oxford, in Oxfordshire, we've done a really good job, and maybe that's because the size of the city and the size of the area and the variety is that we've set up a number of really strong partnerships, one of them being Smart Oxford, and we've got Tony here in the room, and that's a collaboration of partners across Oxfordshire, looking at the different challenges that we face and how to solve those challenges, and also a partnership, a community interest company called Mobox that we set up, and the County Council are one of the lead partners, and that enabled us to have a neutral space to test and question the challenges that we're facing in Oxford around mobility. So I think not just the County Council, but other partners, including academia, understood that they could not do this alone. I think having a shared purpose is really important as well, and if we've all got that shared purpose in the room, then the goals and outcomes are a lot easier to get to. But being honest about that as well, and making sure that at the offset we're all honest in what our goals are, because honestly they are different between businesses and local authorities. I think something that is, and I'm not going to lie, it's taken us about 3 years to get here or more, is if we want to work successfully with public-private partnerships, we need to be more agile as local authorities. We need to be more responsive. If you're looking at how our legal departments, how our procurement teams respond, we need to be much quicker. And we've got a huge amount of support now within the local authority to allow us to be more agile. And it's not just local authorities. I often see that the big companies are sometimes as slow as we are because they're just big beasts. And we need to support the SMEs because we don't want to inhibit growth, because that's what we're here to do. We're here to speed things up to allow them to test in the space in Oxfordshire. I think what's important for our team is we have got up to 25 non-disclosure agreements with different companies, be it academia, be it businesses, across the UK and across cities in Europe. And the reason I mention that is I think it's really important not to put all your eggs in one basket, because you don't want to look for one solution. You want to keep testing because the challenges keep changing. So it's not one partnership we've gone into, it's many different partnerships. And I think the data trust model is really important. I think we're collecting more and more data because we've got up to 25 live projects at the moment, and our internal systems can't cope with storing all that data. So we're looking at other providers and other partnerships to see how we can store that data in a trusted way. In terms of the bureaucratic differences, I think agility is one of them. I think that's the main thing. The local authorities need to be more agile, but as do the big businesses. But across the smart city sector, It's that on the one hand, we need to support the companies and the lighting companies and the smart technology companies in testing their new models, because often those new business models are not proven. But we need to protect ourselves as a local authority and as an asset holder, so we need to not get drawn into long-term exclusivity clauses, and that's something that we need to be much more wise about and much more clever and smarter about. And if we're honest at the offset of partnerships, that's where we need to start talking about it. I think local authorities traditionally don't like to take risk. So for me and for our service and our team, it's about de-risking those decision makers for our senior members, for our directors, so they support the projects that we're working with. I think what's really important in some of the areas that we're doing is why would local authorities and partners invest in these smart city solutions? So it's about proving the return on investment. And I think what's really important is not just to look in one sector and one silo. So if I'm investing in something in transport, the return on investment might be actually in a different area. It might be in the health and care sector because we're reducing congestion, which will help with scheduling. So it's looking at those decision making. So you're investing to save for the future, but also looking at different ways that we partner. We don't just spend 2 million and invest in a consultancy to provide the product for us. It's very different now. It's more of an investment in a product. We're not trying to IP grab, but we're trying to look at how we can become part of the solution. So maybe we start to look at how we license the product that we've invested in. Examples of that is where we've just invested in our next generation mobility model, and rather than going into a standard, let's pay a consultancy, a transport consultancy, a certain amount of money to deliver that, we've gone, okay, we're taking a risk here. We want something that's actually not on the market, but the sum of the whole is. So we're going to go out to a collaboration through an innovation partnership procurement, and we're part of that. So that's really pushing out traditional transport modelling. And the same with health and care. We're doing very similar things with health and care, street lighting, and look at how we can challenge the norm. And we've had such positive feedback from the industry, because I think industry know things are changing and they're really open to do something with Oxfordshire. And I think that's because we've got legitimacy. We've got we brought in over 100 million. We've got successful projects running across the board. And I think finally, what we do, we work very closely with people across Europe and the expertise, because we know that we haven't got it all in Oxfordshire. We've got strong partnerships with Barcelona. We've got partnerships with Lund. We've also taken the learning from the US and Asia around health and care. And places like Edinburgh and Scotland and Wales are doing some fantastic things with very little money around partnership in mobility. So we're really keen to take this to the next level.
Perfect. Thank you, Laura. Now, moving to Gustav. So, Stockholm is the perfect city. We'll talk about air quality, and I have a few questions for you. How do the public and private interact together? The next question is air quality monitoring. The debate around the high requirements of air quality standards, is the data good enough? And the last question, the traffic is #1 climate issue. So conversation around living habits and how the city can support and change to accommodate this. I just want to say that I have been involved with the Stockholm congestion charging. It was fabulous, and I highly believe in, I believe City of Stockholm is doing a lot of great work. So I look forward to hear from you.
Well, thank you very much. Well, first of all, I'd like to elaborate a bit on the public and private interaction. And it's actually, I'd say it's 3 different ways we work together. First, of course, it's the procurements. Second of all, it is in demonstration projects and testing things. And third, I would say it's also other types of collaborations that we have with the private sector. But to take them one by one, the procurement. We have an annual turnover about 5 billion euros, and we procure goods and services for maybe 3.5 billion euros per year. Now, When procuring these services and goods, we can really push forward the environmental issues and the sustainability issues in these procurements. If you take, for example, our fleet of vehicles, today 97% of our fleet is electric or running on other alternative fuels, predominantly biogas, coming from the fermentation of the sludge at the sewage works. The equation is 100 people using the toilet is enough to drive one car. You can't fit everyone into that one car, that's why we have the electric ones as well. But we also now put, when we procure services, like when we buy food to the schools and the childcare centers, we put in requirements that the transports from those who provide the food should also be with alternative vehicles. And the latest procurement we did, which was like a 0.5 billion euro procurement of foodstuff, we asked for 1 out of 5, or 2 out of 5 of the vehicles should be clean vehicles, but it turned out that they could provide that all of them are running on alternative fuels. And by putting in these requirements in our procurements, we also move forward. So procurement is very important as a way of obtaining our goals. Second, all demonstration projects. In a big organization or a big city like ours, you can't go to the city council and say, let's do like this instead. Or when I went to the street department, I said, can't we start with smart street lights? And they said, we have this sensor, it's worked for 100 years, it turns on the lights at dusk and turns them off at dawn, that's fine for us. And I said, please, this is just, we'll try it in a small demonstration project. And they said, okay, try it. So now in the Grow Smarter project, I have some brochures with me I'll put up in front. That's one of the 12 things we have tried or demonstrated in the city. And now the street department wants to change 24,000 street lights to LED lights that dim when no one is there, turns them up to full illumination when 3 lights ahead and 3 behind so people feel secure. So by demonstration projects, we work very much with the industry. And in the Grow Smarter case, we have Stockholm, Cologne, Barcelona, we have 40 industrial partners involved, and they show off their systems at our sites, which helps us because it helps us to introduce and test these solutions, but also helps these companies to sell it to other cities. Just last year, we had 1,000 groups coming to look at our solutions in the city of Stockholm in the Grow Smarter project. This is just like a big fair where we are selling these solutions. Because our small city won't help solve the global climate issues, but if other cities take after when they can see these solutions, it'll help. So demonstration projects really help both convince the people within our city, but also help the industry to sell it to others. Finally, we have other ways of cooperation as well. We have a climate pact where some 200 companies within the city of Stockholm have joined up to meet the same environmental goals that we have set up in our city. They have promised to go as far as we are on bringing down greenhouse gas emissions and now also other environmental issues. So that would be how the public and private can interact in our city. If you look at air quality, we are approached by lots of vendors trying to sell all kinds of sensors, loads of different sensors. We monitor the air quality according to the Air Quality Directive of the EU. We only need 9 sensors. We have a wonderful way of calculating the emissions using these sensors, using traffic-related data. We don't need thousands of sensors anywhere. We have these sensors which have a very high quality, and these systems are also calibrated and checked by the EU, so they actually, the calculations also meet the requirements. Of course, other people might want to have these, but we don't need loads of new sensors. We have actually been able to reduce the number of measurement stations during the years. And at the present time, we now meet the air quality directives, both for nitrogen oxide, particulate matters, and the other substances as well, due to partly the congestion taxation, where the inner city traffic went down by 20% and is staying there at a way lower cost for congestion taxation than you're paying in the congestion fee in London, but a larger area in Stockholm. All our work on clean vehicles, where today 25% of all the vehicles running in the city are running on renewable fuels or electricity, and also the district heating, where 80% or more than 80% of all the buildings are connected to a common system for heating, thus eliminating the need for furnaces of their own. But still, even if the air quality is improving, we have the big challenge in front of us, and that is road transport and the climate-related issues. Still, 75% of the fuel used is fossil, petrol or diesel. And we have to move away from that. And our city's goal is to be fossil fuel free by 2040. And that's not so far away. If you look, how long does a car last if we're going to change the fleet? A car lasts 20 years? That's 2020. So it's a big need for change. And what we're doing now is looking at different ways to be completely fossil fuel free by 2040, finding the best ways to do this with the least impact on the Stockholmers' economy and the population, having the least ways of offering them or them having to change their mode of transport, etc. So we're looking at different options how to do this, either by completely prohibiting fossil diesel and fossil petrol. We have a possibility now, a national legislation giving us the power to set up a zone. We decide the size of it for only electric vehicles and biogas fueled vehicles. On the other hand, that doesn't permit like biodiesel vehicles. That would be more expensive, changing from conventional diesel vehicles, which could be changed to just biodiesel as a fuel instead, which would be. So we're looking into these economic issues on how to do this in the best way of meeting our goals, and also trying to show other cities that it is completely possible to change and reduce our emissions and be fossil fuel free, which I see as completely essential. And I also have one copy of our strategy for Stockholm fossil fuel free. So the first one who's up here will get it. But it's also on the net.
Do you think this is a secret for the Lagom life, the level of happiness you have in Stockholm, the good air quality?
Well, we're pretty happy, but we're happy. We can see that the city is growing. We're one of the quickest growing cities in Europe.
Yeah.
And it's growing because we're creating so many kids of our own. That's 2/3 of the population growth. It's not immigrants. We're creating our own population growth. So that's probably a good measurement of how happy we are.
So just quick comparison with Stephen and Gustav. So the link between air quality and transport. Stockholm is almost emission-free, but London still has a long way to go. What are the reasons between those differences? Just a quick note, please.
The reasons between those, well, the size of London and the economic growth in London has created a huge amount of demand over the years. I guess that's one reason that's been done, and I think kind of the lessons that you've laid out around procurement and making sure that our local authorities use their procurement muscle in a more effective way. Like the mayor saw all of us in City Hall yesterday, and he said we need to steal well instead of invent badly. So we can try to use lessons like that in our new London Office of Technology and Innovation, which is our partnership between the mayor and boroughs, to be able to examine new ideas and pilot those ideas to be able to implement within the boroughs and their services, because they do the education service, not the city as a whole.
One last point for Laura. So how can a local authority find the right ROI through leveraging partnerships through a common goal? And then we have the floor for the audience.
Yeah, I think it's, as I said before, it's about having that honest discussion at the beginning and making sure that we're all on the same goal. And if we are looking to value invest in something, we're really clear that this is not about IP grabbing. It's about looking at how local authorities can use their assets in a different way and make the most of that.
Thank you very much. I think we are running a little bit over time, but we probably have time for one or two questions. No time? One question, please? Oh, we have someone desperate to ask a question. Please.
Yes, Councillor Narky will be London Borough of Lewisham. I'd like to ask the panel.
You have a microphone.
I'd like to ask the panel on the issue of data trust models. In my ward, neighbouring wards, we're at war with fly-tippers, and I put together a plan where we've started to give council laptops to 1 or 2 residents who are feeding into our £9,000 cameras to try and catch fly tippers. Of course, I've now realised, and others in my ward have told me, why don't you get those ones they use on TfL on the Crossrail that cost £80 from Amazon? But you need those smaller cameras, you can put a battery in and a chip, much
Is
cheaper.
that a question or a comment?
The question
Okay.
is, my legal department resist the proliferation of this type of resident
Okay.
monitoring.
Yeah,
So can
thank
I have
you.
some
Who are
feedback
you
on that?
addressing the question to?
The panel.
Everyone.
That's a question to the
Okay.
panel, yes.
So
Data
the question is, should we be encouraging a lot more user-generated data and find out ways of us be the guardian, or find ways of third parties being the guardians of that data in the future? The decision whether you want to create that user-generated data is 2 parts. One, on the data trust side, you kind of have to wait a bit till Monday. We're under a bit of an embargo on fully announcing that, so do wait onto that. But in essence, it is trying to examine, is there a case for a third-party legal structure to grant access to data on request from innovators, for instance, those who want to have justice and who are campaigners, how to make sure that they keep that data safe and secure? Do they have the policies in place to do so? Is definitely a criteria that's in there. And the mayor's working on, and I'm actually working right now on the mayor's new cybersecurity strategy, is trying to examine how, especially user-generated data, how we make sure that's safe and secure when it's held by city services and data trusts, that quite apart from the issues around data sharing and GDPR.
Okay. Laura?
I think, in terms of the data sharing, we're in a position where each project that we've had so far has had that data security and that data lake. So we're at the point now where we need to decide what we do and who we give access to that data. So I think we're at a tipping point now. We've got so much data. How do we manage that, and how do we run forward with it? So I haven't got an answer at the moment.
Thank you. Gustav?
Well, we can go on with the next question. There's so much to say about this, so I could be going on for hours speaking about how we work with these issues. We seem to be able to solve it from time to time, but still, people, in some cases, like in the Grow Smarter project, I can see in some countries, like in Germany, people don't even want smart meters for measuring their electricity use. Because someone might see when they turn on their coffee percolator or something in the morning, and can see if they're home or not. On the other hand, people are adding all kinds of information to social media on their political views. The stores know exactly what they're consuming. There's such an unbalance between how data is being collected and how it's being used. So we could speak hours about this.
I think we need to move on to a model where the citizens are the owners of their own data rather than the governments, because then you can give that ownership to those people and they can decide who accesses their data, because local authorities and governments do not have the time and the resources to deal with that, in my view.
I disagree with that. That you should have that those who are generating the data in the city services, they remain the owners of the data. And I think the problem we've had right now is that the providers too often wind up being owners of the data and not the city services. And that leads to a lot of distrust and mismanagement.
Depends what data.
We have very enthusiastic panelists. We have a very hot debate, and I have the organizers hammering me, asking me to stop because we ran over time. Thank you very, very much. I see that we have few questions here, so I'm not sure what to do with the question.
During the networking break, people can come along and ask you the questions.
Okay. We really have to end this session. Thank you very, very much for listening, and I really hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much.